Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to get our bridge attached and also our saddle. And come get a few pieces from the teacher here. I've got some bridge pieces you're gonna make, and I also have an example bridge that you can copy and try to get everything lined up exactly like that one. Come get the saddle for me, that'll go in the little slot of the bridge. And then also get a nut bone. And we're gonna start off with that nut, and it's just gonna go up on the very top of your ukulele up here. And it's obviously a little bit too big, so you can just mark where it needs to be trimmed, and we can just go and cut this and sand it down to the exact size it needs to be. So I'm just gonna line that up right where it lines up on my side and just mark a little line. And then we'll just go to the bandsaw and trim that, maybe sand it down and clean it up. The other thing you need to do on your nut is shape the very back edge. You're just kind of rounding it over a little bit. You don't want a good sharp corner there on the back side. The front side is gonna stay nice and flat, but that back side is gonna be just slightly rounded, so we'll sand that as well. Then that'll just be placed here and just super glued on. For your bridge, again, we're gonna take the example one and we're just gonna match it up and just mark where our little slots need to be cut, and then whatever shape you want to shape this to, it can be whatever shape. If you want to leave it that shape, you can, but we're going to shape that up a little bit. So we'll head over to the bandsaw and trim that nut bone. So I left a little bit of the line showing. We're just gonna go and bump it on the sander until we get right down to the line. And anytime you're sanding this bone, it actually smells really bad. If you wanna wear a mask or something, it can get you one. But it does kind of stink a little bit. Okay, now to sand that curve on that back side, get yourself a hand screw clamp. Set your nut bone down on a flat surface, and then we're just going to have that hand screw clamp just clamp it right on the very edge, so you can hold this with the clamp instead of your fingers. So we're just going to hold it with the clamp, and now we're going to come to the sander and just kind of round over that top edge there. You're not taking too much off, it's just a real gentle round over. Just rounding over that top corner. Once we've got that kind of rounded, we're going to go ahead and glue this in place. Now the little slot area, if it doesn't fit in there very well, you can take maybe a chisel and carefully kind of chisel this area, make sure it's a nice flat surface, do some sanding. Sometimes I even take a saw, get my thumb next to it, and use that as a guide to kind of clean this up straight and flat. But you want that nut to basically just fit right in there, and it needs to be nice and tight up against your fretboard top. And we're just going to take some super glue and glue this in place here. Just kind of hold it there for a minute or two until it dries. So I would maybe put the super glue on your fretboard here on the edge. Doesn't need a lot, just a little bit. Right where it's going to be attaching. If you want to put a little bit on your nut bone, you can do that. Again, it doesn't need a whole lot to be able to stick on there. Careful not to get it on your fingers. We're going to make sure that it's lined up even on the sides there and nice and tight everywhere. And we'll just kind of hold that by hand just with some pressure for about a minute or so, and then it should be good. Okay, on the saddle and the bridge here, again, I've got my example bridge, and just line that up with yours, and we're just gonna mark where the little slots line up so we know where to cut them. Just get everything just kind of pencil line drawn on here so we can get our spacing there right. And then if you want to trace this, you can. Our little pattern here, we're just kind of tracing where we're going to be cutting things down. So I know that all of this is going to be cut down and all of this is going to be shaved down a little bit. We'll just get over to a sander and just kind of shape this however we want. And we'll use a back saw to cut our slots. And you got to be careful not to go too deep. You're only going down to this little back slot. So that's about how deep you're going. So be careful not to go too deep. If you want to shape your saddle also, you notice I've shaped it on this one, same thing. We can cut the length that might be extra long. I usually try to match this shape here for my saddle as well. And we can do that bandsaw and then just go to a sander and just kind of sand it the shape. So I've mounted it in a bench vise here. And again, I like to use my thumb as a fence for the saw. So I'm going to put the saw blade right up against my thumb. And then your first action is just to pull straight back. So right where I want it to go. And I'm just gently pulling back. You're not doing a forward cut yet. Just pulling it back until you can get a little groove right where you want. Once you get a good little groove, again, I still leave my thumb there, but we're just gonna go real gentle back and forth. And you don't want to go too deep. You just want to go down to where you see that little back groove or slot on the very back of the bridge. That's how deep you want to go. It's just to that little point there. We'll just get all four of those cut. Real gentle, real slow, and a backwards cut is your first cut. Get that saw blade right on top of your pencil line. I wanted to show you how deep I was going, right to that top part of that groove. We can use our spindle sander here, or you can also use the rounded part of the horizontal belt sander just to kind of shape our bridge however you want it to go. It'd be nice to have a good pencil line drawn so you know where to shape it to, but whatever shape you want to have this go to. So I've just shaped one side, and the tricky thing is we got to get the other side to match. And so that's what you want to try to get, is both sides to match. So just take your random orbit sander, kind of clean it up, maybe even just a piece of scrap sandpaper you can fold and try to get in those little spots. Sometimes I use a sanding block just to get right into those corners here. We just want to smooth it up, make it look nice. Just trying to soften any sharp corners. now that we've shaped our bridge, our saddle, we can remove the saddle, we don't need that yet. We need to attach the bridge to the body of the ukulele now. And it is really important that we line this up exactly where it needs to be. Not only forward and back, but also left to right where it's going to be placed. And where it's going, you need to find the 12th fret. This should be right where your last dot is, this fret right here, but you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that 12th fret, from the center of that 12th fret to the tip of the nut, and this is this inside part of the nut right here, measure that distance, because that exact distance needs to be from the 12th fret to where the tip of your saddle is going to be. So that'll give us our distance this way. Then as far as going left to right, what I do is I just take just an extra string and just position it where that slot is and where it would line up on the nut, and just kind of look at the positioning on your fretboard to see if that's good, and then also go to the last slot to here and just see, like this shows me that I've got a bigger gap on this side, less here, so I need to shift my whole bridge down just a little bit and just kind of reposition that where that would go, and then compare until you get it right on. And then we can measure and mark the outline where that's going to go before we glue this. So again, very first I'm going to measure from my 12th fret to the nut. So I'm going from the center of that 12th fret, and I've got almost 8.5 inches. I'm just barely shy of 8.5 inches, maybe 8 7/16 or so. So I need to position the saddle from that 12th fret to that same measurement. So measuring that, and right now that's too much, so I'm going to move it this way. I'm just trying to get that same exact position. And that actually looks pretty good right there. Same 8 7/16. So just to double check, I'm measuring from the 12th fret to the tip, just about 8.5, a hair shy, 12th fret to the saddle, and I think we've got it right on. I need to mark that position, so I'm just going to take a little thin pencil line and mark that, and then again I'm going to double check this where that lines up through that slot where that would be positioned on my nut. Same thing over here, and just checking to see how we are. I think I need to move myself just a hair this way. And I'm just looking at the distance from the string to the edge of the fretboard, and I think we got it pretty good right there. So right there looks good too. So I'm going to mark as well my left and right. Now I can remove this, put glue on the back, and get it positioned where I want to go, right between all my marks there. And when you go to clamp this on, I've got this special clamp here that will go into your sound hole and then underneath, and then you can position this right where it needs to go, and then you can just clamp this on and get some pressure. And it'd be a good idea to do a practice dry run with no glue, just to kind of get familiar with how that clamps on nice and tight. And then once you're comfortable with it, we'll get glue on it and clamp it on. When you glue this, you don't need a ton of glue. Just get a little bit, spread that around, and just get it all the way to the edges. You just don't want this glue squeezing out everywhere. It's going to be a big hassle to wipe up all this wet glue later, but just get good coverage. And then the other thing, make sure it's facing the correct direction. It needs to go with these slots on the farthest side. I have had people accidentally glue it this direction, and that's opposite. So pay attention when you glue it. It should be this direction. And I am just going to look at my pencil marks that I've drawn and position this right between all my marks and get it lined up, and then we'll throw that pressure on. It's kind of tricky because with the glue it's going to be slippery and it's going to move around and shift on you a lot. And so maybe having another set of hands, someone to help you, maybe have someone help hold it in position while you clamp it, might be helpful. Again, we're going to go careful through the sound hole. Get this positioned on. Just don't want to ruin or break anything at this point. I'm just kind of eyeballing where those marks are at so I can get it all positioned exactly where it needs to be. Get some pressure on that. Now I'm looking, it shifted on me. So I've got that pencil mark, it shifted up. So I'm going to quickly loosen the pressure. And if you need to do this, you know, do it before that glue sets, so I can shift it back over. Try that again. So take your time with this. Make sure this is a crucial measurement, that you get everything right on, dead on where it needs to go. That looks a lot better. And we'll let that sit and dry. Maybe wipe up any wet glue that maybe squeezed out anywhere, and then we'll be good to go.